Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Serena and today we are going to be talking about free bleeding and everything you need to know in this journey. Watch this video. Guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you are new here, be sure to hit the subscribe button, like and comment on this video. If you are returning, thank you so much and welcome back. Thank you for joining me. Today we are talking about a favorite topic of mine, which is free bleeding. And basically everything you need to know. I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey with free bleeding and how I got to where I am today, pros, cons, all of this good stuff. Everything that you need to know about free bleeding, my favorite brands, the things I've tried, the things I've liked, the things I have not liked, how this has impacted my view of myself as a human individual, and all of those things. I want to start by bringing it literally all the way back to my first ever period, okay? And I highly recommend that if you are thinking about doing this free bleeding journey and you feel like called to just let it all hang out, let it all flow, then I highly recommend you sit with yourself and think back to your first ever period and what that experience was like for you. And here's why. My first experience with my period was very confusing. Of course, I remember in, 5th grade, I think I was 12 or 13 at the time. And so of course I remember in, 5th grade or so, you have the period talk, the reproductive talk in school. And essentially what comes out of that is, where babies are come from, how the reproductive system works. And, I think they give you some pads and tampons. And you're like, okay, cool, here it is. And so my first period, I remember I had pretty severe cramps in my first period. And then I also remember being so afraid to talk to my mom about it that I actually tried to put a tampon in by myself the first time ever. And so what actually ended up happening is I stole one from my mom. First off, she bought the really cheap ones that were like the cardboard insertion ones that are just like ridiculously uncomfortable. So starting off with that, first time ever putting anything inside of myself with a cardboard applicator, and then also not realizing that cardboard applicator has to go up inside you and then you push in the tampon part. So actually what I ended up doing was I let the cardboard sit like outside at the opening of my vagina, and then pushed up and then had the tampon in like way too low. Like it wasn't even in my uterus, it was in like my vaginal canal. So it was, needless to say, very uncomfortable. I remember being at school like trying to like find a way to sit so I would be comfortable and not like, and I just wanted to cry like the entire day, the entire experience. I just wanted to cry, and I was like so mortified. I was so embarrassed. I was just like so deeply uncomfortable that I was like, this is horrible. And now I had to deal with this every single month for practically what felt like the rest of my life. And so I was horribly depressed about it. I was like, I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to feel this way for the rest of my life, really. My first period was a feeling of deep discomfort, deep shame, and pain. And that's the journey into womanhood, right? So really thinking about that and really being with that. And of course, at some point, I think maybe a few periods down the road, I realized like, how to put a tampon in properly. And then I was fine. For some years, I was really fine with that. And that was cool. What ended up changing my journey actually was this feeling of moving into a more spiritual direction. And so with that came a more attunement to my body and what my body needed, and wanting to respect and honor myself deeper. Now, in the beginning of this journey, what I actually was interested in was the sustainability factor. I hated the fact that my blood was going into this like thing that I was throwing away, and it was just like, you know, you use so many of them, they're not reusable, and so it really bothered me that it seemed like such a waste. And so I started to hear about this thing, right, called Diva Cups, and this was about 2 or 3 years ago now. And so what ended up happening is I was with one significant other, and I was really desiring to come off of birth control. And so I had taken the pill since I was probably 16 or 17. And then at this time, I think I was 24 or 25. And was like, okay, I'm ready to come off the pill. Like, it just, you know, it was not good for my body. It was not good for my mental health. And comment below if you've also had the same experience, because I know so many women that have struggled with this for so long, just to prevent pregnancy and to, you know, try to take control of their own body and hormones, and it ends up doing a lot of damage. So what I was actually looking for was a way to be just more natural in general. And so then I actually met my second partner. And after meeting my second partner, I had an IUD put in. So I don't have my IUD in anymore. I took it out, and I am free from any form of contraception at this time, which has been a beautiful experience. We won't get into it now because this is about my period. But so I had that put in, and it was a deeply, deeply painful process. Again, it was kind of like this repeating, right, of my first period, which was, you know, deeply shameful, deeply uncomfortable, and pain, right? And so I had this IUD put in, and I was in the most pain I have ever experienced. Like, oh my gosh, I could not even get up and walk for like 2 or 3 days. It was so painful. And finally, when that subsided, I remember getting my first period. And at this time, I had pretty light periods because I had come off the pill. I was in a more natural cycle. And then I had a period that was like 8 or 9 days long, and just bleeding so heavy for all of those days. And I was like, oh my God, what did I do to myself? What did I do to my body? And can it be reversed, you know? But I was so afraid that if I had this thing taken out of me, that my partner wouldn't approve of me. So I was in a very fragile place in my mental state, in what I believed of myself, what I believed I was worthy of. And so being with this partner, I thought, okay, you know what? I made this decision so that I don't have a child, so that I don't have to worry about it. The IUD that I had at the time it didn't have any hormones in it. It was the copper Paragard. And you know what? I was like, you know what? I made this decision, and so I need to stick with it. And they had told me at the doctor's office it can take, you know, about 6 months for your periods to kind of go back to normal, to have less cramping, all of this stuff. So again, I felt like I was being given like a life sentence of pain, because 6 months can feel like a long time when you're bleeding that much and when you're in that kind of discomfort. And so my jump into free bleeding was actually because I wanted to be more sustainable. And then also I really, really, really wanted to honor and heal my body. And so I felt like it was so painful every month to put something up inside of me that was like a foreign object. You know, it felt like it felt like I was going against what my body really wanted. So I actually first started out with the Diva cup. And I used the one Salt, I think it's SAALT. I'll put a link below to that brand. And so I started off with that. And when I started using this, I really liked the concept of it. You know, like I could do things with my blood. You know, I would do rituals with my blood. I would put it on my face. I would water the garden with it, and I was able to connect to my own body fluids in a way that was so beautiful to me. In a way, you know, I could do yoni paintings every month and make a painting out of this beautiful blood, this beautiful source of life. And so that's the part that really started to change for me, was the way I viewed my period, and that shame. I think we can all agree that we're induced in society to feeling a lot of shame around our periods, and to feeling like we're gross or we're unsanitary or we're not attractive at this time of the month. And I think it's such a pity that we feel this way about ourselves even, you know, so it's not just men who are feeling this way about us, or just our partners, or whatever it might be, society standards. It's really like we feel that way about ourselves. And so for me, moving into this space of a more sustainable way to manage my blood was so freeing. You know, the first time I ever put my blood on my face, I felt like a warrior princess. I was like, oh my God, what have I been missing out on all this time? I remember the first time that I poured blood into a cup and put water in it, and I fed the plants, and I just felt the energy of that, and the energy of the plants like open up, and the earth be just like, thank you for giving this life back to the earth to sustain more life, right? Rather than flushing it into the toilet or letting it be absorbed by a cotton synthetic piece of something that we stick inside of ourselves, right? And then what actually ended up happening in this process for me, as I was traveling around the States at the time, camping out of my car, and I was using the Salt cup, and what ended up happening a lot of times actually was my flow was so heavy that it would leak during the night, and then I would wake up in this tent in this cold place where I couldn't wash my underwear or clothing or something like that, and then I would have blood like dripping down my leg, and I was just, again, just so uncomfortable and felt so shamed. And you know, I really started to just get sick of it. You know, I was like, I'm just so sick of being uncomfortable, being shamed around this time of the month, feeling like I can't go out and see anybody or go anywhere or do anything. And what I really want is to just feel okay with this. And so what I did from that point actually was I bought a pair of period underwear to wear with my cup. And so that if I was sleeping during the night and the cup started to leak, that I would still be protected, right? So what ended up happening from there was that I actually ended up just taking the cup out altogether. There was a certain point in which it was helpful for me to transition, because one of the things as being highly sensitive that was a problem for me in the beginning was this feeling of the blood dripping, you know, from my uterus into my vagina. So it was like I could feel it dripping down. And so if you're very highly sensitive, you're probably also very sensitive to sensations, right? And so every time I would feel, you know, a glob of blood or mucus drip down, I would get this like really uncomfortable, like, oh no, I'm probably leaking, like what's happening? Very anxious feeling. And so what I ended up realizing is the more I just allowed it to, and I let go and I softened my body, my periods changed drastically. So from the first month of being 8 or 9 days long and cramps the entire day, by the time I was almost taking the IUD out, which was about a 2-year period, by the end of that, I had sat with my body long enough that my periods were only 4 days long and I didn't have any cramps anymore. And so I worked with my body every single month to ask my body, what do you need from me? How can I best support you? What do you need? Do you need rest? Do you need magnesium? Do you need iron? Do you need comfort? Do you need heat? Do you need whatever it was that my body needed was what I started to honor. And that's what made the transition from bleeding into a cup to free bleeding very, very natural and very easy by that point, because my body just basically told me, like, no, we like this free bleeding thing. And so I'll share a quick story. I now use the brand Thinx. I use Thinx, and I have 3 of them. I have the really high-waisted heavy flow one. I have like a boy short, medium flow, and then I have the thong. So I have 3 different ones, and I use that through, my period is usually about 4 days long. So I use those in the 4 days of my period and usually wash one of them again for the last day. Depending on how heavy my flow is that month, it's usually pretty consistent. But so the craziest it ever got for me was when I was traveling through the continent of Africa, and I was in Zimbabwe at this time, and I had gotten my period, and I decided that it would feel very empowering to just not even wear period underwear at all and just truly free bleed, completely let the blood drip down my legs, let it drip back to the earth. And so what I did was I had a scarf, like a big almost like a sarong scarf, and I wore that around my waist for 4 days. And just allowed myself to completely bleed into it. So we were camping at the time, so we were outside most of the time, and for 4 days or so I just had blood dripping down my legs. And honestly, it was such a beautiful experience to be so comfortable with yourself that you can allow other people to see you that way. And it's not like we were around a lot of people. Like, I was with the 2 people that I was camping with, and then like here and there we would go into town to get something and then come back. So it's not like I was around a lot of people, but part of that time we were staying at a hostel as well. So there were some people around. And it was just such a beautiful thing to be so confident in what you're doing and who you are, and to claim that, like, anybody who's looking at me right now can see that I'm bleeding from my vagina because it's dripping down my legs and it's puddling on this wrap skirt that I'm wearing. It was such a beautiful thing, and it really freed up those last feelings of like shame and discomfort and not wanting to be messy and not wanting to feel gross and caring so much about what other people think about me and my body and what I do with myself. And I remember my partner telling me a lot, like, he was like, like, not a lot of guys would support you in what you're doing. And he's like, I'm such a good partner. Not a lot of guys would support you in that. And here we are, my next partner, fully supportive of, yes, I water our houseplants with my period blood. Yes, I do yoni paintings. When I feel that creative surge on my period, I will use the blood in sacred ways to honor my body, to honor my cycle, to honor the earth, to honor this process of life, right? Because what your period blood really is saying is that you didn't get pregnant that month, right? And so what better way to honor that essentially is a death, right? It's basically a death. And so what a beautiful way to honor that death is to feed more life, right? To say, like, just because I'm not creating life within me doesn't mean I can't use my, my beingness, my blood, my water to feed more life outside of me in different ways. And so by creating art, right, by feeding plants, by using this sacred thing in such a intimate and beautiful way, we're able to really heal the relationship with ourselves and our bodies. So if you take anything away from this, it's that you are beautiful. You do not have to have shame around this time of the month, around your body, around what your body is doing. You do not have to allow other people's opinions to affect you in the way of whatever you want to do with your body and your blood and your fluids. It's just such a beautiful thing, and I wish for every woman, honestly, to be able to experience this type of freedom within the body, because it is truly a beautiful experience. So thank you so much for watching this video. Put any comments down below. Are you on a free bleeding journey? Do you want to try it? Are you willing to try it? What is your experience? Put it down below. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you next time. Big love, Serena.